you had mentioned about the metabolism of LSD, and I'm wondering about what we know so far in regards to genetic profiles and how they influence the metabolism of psychedelics. Primarily, I'm most familiar with tryptamine-based psychedelics, but if you have more to say on things like the mescaline and then like the broad range of mescaline-like psychedelics or MDMA, et cetera, please do. But I'm particularly curious about why and how some people can eat a gram of mushrooms and be in another dimension. And then other people will eat 4 or 5 or 6 and say that they don't experience anything whatsoever.
Yeah, that's been one of the more interesting things that I've observed over time too. And there's a couple different factors there. And I'll preface this by saying there's really no studies in humans looking directly at what happens if we give, this person with this particular variant, a gram of mushrooms and this person. This is all looking at Petri dish studies, kind of isolating these different factors, but based on those types of experience, that this stuff happens in real life, and I'm pretty excited as more psychedelic assisted psychotherapy comes online. With there's going to be these types of avenues for research to really isolate what are the specific variants we can point to for those types of things. But I'd say there's a handful of different factors. The first one is going to be with psilocybin, a enzyme called alkaline phosphatase. Alkaline phosphatase is this enzyme that is really important for bone development, calcification of bone, and it's something that is measured on a standard metabolic panel. Like when you're going for just general lab work, it's you check your alkaline phosphatase because it's a good warning marker for things going out, problems in the body, for a wide variety of things. But there's about 30 to 40 different genetic variants that have been identified that will, again, shift levels by like 2 or 3% with people. And you'll see, when I run labs with my clients too, and I'll see the ranges, from all the way at the bottom of the reference range all the way to the top. And the reason this is important is alkaline phosphatase converts psilocybin into psilocin, which they're now really referring to psilocybin as more of a prodrug, and the psilocin, is really what can cross the blood-brain barrier and really do the work there. And they do have some rat model studies showing that when they inhibit alkaline phosphatase, they don't get any of the effects of psilocybin because it's not being converted into psilocin, and it's just being broken down before it has any chance to actually do any work on the central nervous system. And so I have a feeling that that's one of the main factors when people don't experience anything at all, is that they have very low alkaline phosphatase. And there's some kind of more common things that can cause it to drop pretty low, like zinc or magnesium deficiency. Can cause you to have really low alkaline phosphatase, and folic acid deficiency, vitamin C as well. So, if your diet is kind of lacking in one of those things, that could be a factor. If you have a whole bunch of different genetic variants that kind of push you in that direction, you're probably not going to experience those things.
That's interesting. I had a colleague who said that he found that giving people high doses of vitamin C, people who are otherwise unable to experience psychedelics, prior to having that psychedelic experience, would enable them to have like a normal bandwidth of dose response. And he associated it to cutting levels of monoamine oxidase in the blood, but possibly it has to do with bringing back levels of alkaline phosphatase, which made me think about lemon tech as a way of sort of like perhaps pre-converting or just bringing alkaline phosphatase into the system alongside the psilocybin to encourage that shaving off of the phosphate group and turning it into psilocin. So that's interesting stuff. Yeah. I'm so curious right
Yeah,
now.
and totally what you said there. That's the second step. Is
Mm.
like once that psilocybin is converted into psilocin, how long it sticks around in the system is kind of governed by your MAO levels, monoamine oxidase. So there, and again, there's maybe about 8 or so different variants in. I think it's largely in the MAOA gene. There's an MAOA and MAOB, but I think, from my understanding, it's largely looking at MAO that's produced in the liver, which is governed more by the MAOA gene. And there's maybe about 8 or so different variants they know of that will kind of contribute to regulating MAO levels. And lots of these are what they call promoter genes or promoter regions, where they'll just say like, yeah, make more of this or make less of this. In terms of, some things will change the shape of an enzyme, but these are more strictly like have more or have less. And I had a client, because MAO is going to be involved in most of the tryptamines. I had a client who did 2 ayahuasca ceremonies and didn't experience a thing. And her take on it was that like the ayahuasca spirit didn't want to work with her or something of that nature. And I took a look at her MAO SNPs, and sure enough, she really had, I think it was like 6 out of 8 of the ones that were associated with higher levels of it. And so my thought there was maybe she just didn't get enough of the MAO in ceremony to actually do anything, or to actually, suppress the breakdown enough of it for her to really experience anything.
Now, I know that you said that you weren't would you say like a biophysicalist or whatever? What's the term? Yeah, a biophysicalist or something. But at the same time, I couldn't help but interpret what you were saying personally by being like, magical thinking fails again, while also understanding the power and beauty of sort of the religious frameworks for working with something like ayahuasca. So I'm in a bit of a paradox while also leaning heavier on the physicalist side in this particular moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, my personal experience says that like that I can't write off the idea of at all of there being some type of consciousness to the plant itself that might choose to work with some people that, in different ways at different times, or how you approach it. I mean, it's a complex dance.
My experience states pretty much the same, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, there's more mystery there that I certainly don't claim to understand than is available through this, but it provides an interesting lens, and I'm fascinated just to explore this as more research is available, because I like I mentioned, LSD was invented
1943, or
1943.
It was first experience 1943. I think it was made a couple years earlier.
So we're talking 70, 80 years or so, and just now the first understanding of which liver enzymes, that they're called cytochrome P450 enzymes, are involved in breaking this stuff down. Whereas when a pharmaceutical drug comes through the pipes, like that's the first thing they do is like, let's figure out how people are breaking this down so we can, understand drug to drug interactions and dosing and that kind of thing. So once again, it's the unfortunate side effects of prohibition insanity. But
when you were talking about the the alkaline phosphatase, like the genetic variants that might limit psilocybin use, I couldn't help but feel curious about Kalindi Yi's genetic profile, like the man who eats 40 to 50 dry grams of mushrooms. Although I know that he does it, I've been in the room with him when he's had at least 20 grams and just had his experience. But and not to say that he isn't high out of his fucking mind when he's up there, but I wonder if he has a genetic predisposition that enables him to eat more, or if it really is just a psychological disposition that he's conditioned himself to be able to surrender into such an experience, even though it's so large. So that's something I'd be really curious to have like a bunch of big level psychonauts from all over the world all like send in their genetics to somebody to like analyze, and then have them rate, you know, what their regular dosing is on different substances, and see if there's a correlation that could be found amongst like their genetic variances and the doses that they label as being effective to have to be in a, you know, like a beyond a threshold, like to pass the threshold into a full dose.
Oh, I also volunteer to do the analysis there, and I've got a friend who does big data. He does a lot of stuff. Who's like a statistician that I know would be into that too.
Well, let's just say to the listeners, if that's interesting to you, tweet to us. I'm at James W. Jesso. What's your Twitter handle?
I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram though, as Whole Systems Health.
All right. Well, tweet to me then, and if we get enough people saying for it, maybe you and I can work together and see if we can pull something like that around.